Hey everybody, Eric Meyer, Instructor Summit. I'm here with my good new friend I haven't met yet, Wendy Moretz. We almost met at Summit Point, and she sent me her Shenandoah data, and I thought I'd go over it. And all I know about Wendy is Facebook had a blue S9 S197 Mustang, and she said I think it was PS2. I have to go back and look at the tire again. But I'm assuming it's got some stock suspension and whatnot. And but we'll find out a little bit about that later. For the most part, this is to help her get, and for anybody else that wants to watch, it's helpful when you look at your own data. So we're going to take a little bit of dive and then a deep dive and have some fun. Okay, so Apex Pro data, and I'm going to go these three channels right here. I'm going to go to that fastest lap, and I'm just kind of going to look in here a little bit and see what is the car doing. And right away, I see right here, actually go right here, right under lap, is that thing will pull 1.2. And it's going to pull 1.2. And look over here. That's a little peaky spike on the front end, so that's a different story. But this thing's pulling 1.2 all day long, so she's getting a lot of lateral out of this car. How about brakes? Well, look at that. That's zero point 0.8. Interesting. Right there. I'm going to look at some other right here, 0.8. So I'm just looking to see how much. Look at that 0.1. 0.1. I'm just looking at the braking values and what that thing is capable of, and or what how much of it you're using. There's another one down here at 1.1 and 1.1. Interesting in that we're getting an honest 1.2 laterally out of the car, and at a bunch of places, even more than 1.2 in the corners, but not seeing that in the braking. So that's the very first thing that I see. And where I would look specifically is right here. These are high-speed straightaways, right? So we're right into here, right, and going into brakes, which is right here, right? We're barreling down the track at a $110, and we're going heavy onto the brakes, so we can see right here in a straight line with a little bit of a turn right here. But for the most part, that should be heavy braking. You should be throwing everything at the car possible because it's that kind of corner. It is a straight corner. And when I say straight corner, it's a straight braking zone. And you'd see that right here by this. This is your wheel input. The car's not seeing a lot of lateral. It's just in a straight line. And that's the same thing right here, right? When we go to heavy brakes, as represented in this long G, tell me if I'm going too fast, which is also 1.1, I think, about 1.1, which makes sense. And looks like this is a manual transmission as well. And I see that because of right there, that thing and that thing. That's a heel toe shift, which would make sense because it is going from really high speed 105 down to 45, and 105 down to 45 again. And that's what I'm looking at right there. We're coming off the brake pedal a little bit right there. If you had a brake pressure sensor, you could see that. That's basically what that means. When you're going to a blip, you're rolling your foot a little bit, and your brake foot's coming off a little bit, and then it's going back down, right? So that area right there is really the area of opportunity. It's not much, but it's all these little things. So it's right here is what we're talking about. See if I could do this. Right here is this area of opportunity that we could be on the brakes a little bit more. Okay? I'm not being harsh. That's just how you look at data. And that would be one over here as well. A little bit less, but you're just looking for all these things, right? That part right there. Is that making sense? So you can see this on your own. This is why we're doing this. We're doing this together so you could see it. So that was just this lap, right? So just for fun, we're looking at these. Remember how we talked about these sawtooths and that sawtooth shape right there. I see that there. Nice, nice. Looks like you can attack the brake pedal pretty well. And I noticed that in the slopes of these things, right? The slopes are pretty steep. If they were kind of like this, kind of like over here, right? Let's say you're not attacking that as much. So I think you have no problem attacking the brake pedal. That slower effort would kind of roll over like this, and the slope, instead of being like this, right, would be taking more time to slow the car down. So it looks like you don't have a problem jumping on the brakes. What's interesting though is the amount of how much you're going to the brake relative to back to this lateral. 1.2, 1.2, 1.2, 1.2. That's every bit of like 1.3, 1.4. Let's take a look at that. Where is that bad boy? Where is that bad boy? I'm going to switch over to this mode, and I'm going to spin this a little bit so we can see more. That's why. Ha 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 ha. Do you know why? What's the unique feature about this corner right here? Right? That's why you're seeing that. Totally makes sense. That's why you're seeing that. And if I have to tell you, failed miserably. No, that's the super carousel cambered up the wazoo corner, right? And that's what that looks like. That's why you're able to get all that. Okay, let's keep going here. I'm just going to jump around and take some other laps. I don't normally do this with folks, but I'm going to just take the three quickest, or what appear to be the 3 good zingers. And I'm looking here for variation to see what's going on. Assuming that there's no traffic. There might have been. I'm looking right here, which is interesting. It looks like we have 3 different distinct brake application points that all end up about the same minimum speed. May or may not have been traffic. I don't know. This is interesting. I'm looking for consistency. Not because you're being evaluated. I'm just kind of seeing the general trends. This is interesting right there. I wonder where that is. That is, looking up here. Interesting. Okay, we're going to go right over here to see how much of the tire we're using. And that would be the friction circle, or the GG plot, the XY plot. And you'll notice I have 3 of your faster laps highlighted, right? And we see that you are at the outsides of the friction circle should read about 1.2, and one of them should read higher, 1.6, because of that. And then these other ones are there. So this one's going to show in the upper right quadrant more lateral G's than in the upper left quadrant. So just remember that 1.6 and all these 1.2s. The other thing that's interesting is we're probably only going to see 1 G of peak at the bottom. So here we go. There we go. Just like we talked about, 1 G peak, 1.2 here, 1.6 out here because of the carousel. Right? We're looking at 3 laps. We only had 1. This is really hard to see. If we really want to do it, you can do a whole bunch of them. I try not to do the out laps. These are all kind of the same, enough to see the shape. And this is very interesting. Here is your biggest opportunity, sister. Do you see it? You see it? Here it is right here. If you remember how this looks, how this works, it's this, right? Here we are with the wheel straight because of this lateral, right? Right. And what we want to do is this. all right, and this. All right, this is what I do in my head and make those lines right here, right? So when the car's braking, right, and we're braking at about 1.2, at least in some of those, and we come off the brakes and we get out here where the car is fully loaded in or around the apex, and I'll show you what that looks like. Just going to pick a corner. I'm going to pick these guys right down in here, right? Right down here. I'm going to put the cursor right down in there. I'm going to open that up. All right, we're really talking about this right in here, right, as it relates to here. Super cambered, getting a ton of grip. Okay. Here's what I see. This braking right here. So this would be, think about this. We're going to look at all three of these, and we're going to relate it back to here. Relate that back to here. Okay. I like to do this just so it's easier to see. Right? So you can see that braking zone has a lot of turn to it. It's not right. It has this as opposed to, right? So by definition, that car's driving right down in here. And if we kind of peek and cheat and kind of look at that, right, we can see how we're driving it. These aren't always super accurate. There we go, right there. We're down on the inside. Okay, so here's what I see. I see right here that the car is coming down the straight, right? Coming down the straight. And we can see right here with the wheel that the wheel is relatively straight, right? And here's our acceleration. Interestingly enough, for some reason, this thing goes up a little bit, which is interesting right here. Let's see if you can see that a little bit. Yeah, on the right part of the track. Make sure that I'm on the right part of the track here. Yeah, it's really interesting. It actually goes up a little bit right there. This is really interesting. Oh, is that downhill? I'm trying to remember. Let's look. Only had about 3 laps on that bad dude. I bet you that sucker's downhill. And altitude. And that's why, because we're starting to go, getting up over that hump. That's why it's like that. Ha ha. I'm good. Okay. So let's get rid of that channel. There we go. So here's what I see. I see that this right here, that coming off the brakes has a lot of stuff, and still we are at what would be the apex right here. And that's kind of misleading because it's in the bowl, but typically the center of where these two are ish is pretty much the apex. If you kind of look at that and think about that, it's in and around that area. And I see something interesting. Look at those G's right there, in and around the apex. It's almost like you're going to throttle right there. This is adding throttle right in here, and then we're lifting, as noted by this lower one, and they're going back to full juice here as we unwind the wheel and then turn the wheel the other way. So I see a lot of this wacky stuff when you look, and this right here. This is interesting. This is interesting. So here's really where this is. We are going to brake, and we're coming off the brake before we get all the way out here. This shape ideally looks like this. And this area of opportunity right here, and we'll look at that in a second, is where you're going to brake and then you're coming off of the brake, then you're turning the wheel, adding lateral. So as you come off the brake, right, it's not blending, and this is the trail braking technique. This is your opportunity right here. This is rather significant and large, and that is low fruit that I would attack like a banshee. So let's go back and see if we can look at this more specifically. And here's your zinger lap. This is actually better, right? Remember before it had this big old thing sitting here? So this might have been a goofy sample lap. Let's see if we can pick just these 3 fastest laps. In other words, we might have had a contributor in there that was wonky. Come on, baby. So let's look at the shape. Now, still right there. Do you see it? So here's 3 of your best laps of this outing. We're getting all of this big lat stuff. And what this says is when we come off the brake, it's going this way, right? In other words, as we come off the brake, it is not having lateral input going this direction. It's going backwards. So it's brake, no steering wheel input, coming off brake, right? Coming off brake to here. Then we're starting to put wheel in. You see that? And the cluster looks like it's about in here. So your opportunity, Sister Sledge, is blending, coming off the brake and turning the wheel. And I'm going to show you where we can find out where that is. Is this making sense so far? This is getting a little advanced, but I saw that you were pilot and you're probably really sharp, so you can digest this. This is why I'm throwing this at you. I'm going to do this one right here. This is a little advanced. That's what this total is right here. This total is also called G-sum. Now, if you don't know what that is, Google it, or I'll put another link to a G-sum description in here. But here is what that is, right through here. We're looking at that shape. This is interesting. Okay, so I'm going to show you the shape of this, right? And we can smooth these out. Let's actually smooth these channels out. And that's going to go here. And we're going to go to T total. And we're going to smooth that a little bit like that. We're going to apply and make that channel. Oh, I picked the wrong one. I apologize. Go to channels, GPS, not total acceleration. GPS, GPS, total. Boom, that one. So we're going to go there, smooth them out a little bit so it's easier to read. Just now this, it's easier to read. Here's what I see. So this is the same friction circle. This part right, excuse me, this part right here. Come on, baby. This part right here. Okay, if you think about this, here's the lateral part. Here's interesting. Here's off brake, throttle, back to brake, off brake, throttle, right, and then a whole bunch of throttle as we're jumping out right here, right. So right here, from here forward, whoops, come on, baby. From this point on the track forward, right here, look at where that's at. which is right here. This is where we're throwing the juice in. This is like your throttle position sensor. Right there, when it goes up, where my Mickey Mouse hand is. So here's what's up. This bad boy right here should look like this. And there's a dip in it. And this would be the total ability to use the whole tire on the outside of the friction circle. The outside of the friction circle. Here is the friction circle contribution for just the lateral. And here it is, the wonky part for your feet. This would be your hands contribution, and you're killing it. And this is your feet. This is the same thing as this right here. So if we were using everything and running the outside of it, it would look like this. Okay? In reality, it looks like this. This area that's missing, this unused area, is this right here. Is right, where'd you go? Total accelerate right here. It's right here. You see this? See this little dip? That's what that is. And if you think about this, where it starts, right here, what this is telling me right here is we can go faster in here, right in here. And I say that because here's where we're slowing down. There's actually some more grip in here in your car. I would consider charging this a little harder, not coming in with a later brake and a harder brake, but you can just more speed. You can break it off back here. See what the car feels like when you're rolling in maybe like 4 more miles an hour, and see how she reacts. And I say that, here's your braking zone right here, beginning your braking zone. We'll do that so you can see that the mic. There, braking. You can see our hands are straight. This is where we start moving our hands, right there. At the same time, we're coming off the brake. Looky there. That's interesting. That's that goofy downshift thing right here. Your opportunity, I believe, is going to be in 2 areas. Just by looking at this, I would do some more heel toe practice, and I would I'd actually brake earlier and brake lighter and roll in like a lot more speed into the corner. And when I say a lot more speed, I tell everybody, if I was in your ear sitting right next to you, I'd say 2 more miles an hour, 2 more miles an hour, 2 more miles an hour, 2 more miles an hour. And here's one of the reasons why. Do you see this right here? Do you see how this comes down and then it goes up and it comes back down and up, which is also reflected in here, right? What this says is right here, when you got right to here, you can see that the speed goes up. For some reason, you got right to there and you said, I can go faster, so I'm going to throttle. Right there. You overbroke. And that's a trait of overbraking when people go back to throttle. So we are overbraking, okay? And that's one of the traits of why this shape looks like it is. We're overbraking and going back to gas versus blending. So I can tell you right now that you're getting everything out of the car this way. We're just going to change your braking process, which is normal, by the way. If you've never had anybody ride with you and talk about your feet and how to make more speed from off brake to apex, this is what we're talking about now. We're talking about the time from off brake to apex, right? Because that's what that is right there. If you didn't have anybody in your DE path teach you this, which is quite common, or you never had an instructor say anything about not just the trail brake word, because so many instructors talk about trail brake and they don't know what the F they're talking about. They freaking suck at it because I look at their data. You may or may not have been a student of this kind of organization, or you have car-related issues. If you got an S197 stick axle, and you'd say that your heel toe isn't your best trait yet, this would be one of those things. A really good blip without pulling your foot off will help you right there as well. But this is all feet related. This is hands over here. Oopsie. This is hands. Excuse me. Yeah, this is hands over here. But this is feet. This is release of the feet. Here and here. So that's about all. I would stop right there and I would spend a ton of time thinking about your feet. That might involve moving your pedals over. That might involve having somebody drive a reference lap with your car, which, by the way, you don't have to drive it fast, because really all you're talking about is this part right here. You want to know what the car does off brake to apex. It's this area right here that you want to know. And so you can have somebody who's really good drive your car, and they don't have to haul the mail like crazy right here. They can go 20 miles an hour less and just roll it in 5 miles an hour faster. But you want to see what your car potential can do. So let's get away from this corner right here and let's go to some other corners and see if that same issue exists. And I call that a global issue. We're almost done here. I hope you're following along with what I'm going, with what's happening here. Let's look down here at this corner and see what's happening. And so I'm looking right here. This is kind of interesting. Do you see this right here? For whatever reason, almost all three of these look like this right here. Come on, software. Hang on a second. All three of these look like this. All right, you see that? And that's weird. That's on entry. This is coming off brake and then going to brake again. You can see that right here. And I'm exaggerating right here, but I'm really not exaggerating. So that is part of your style. Let's see if we can find anything else. Going into here. Yep. And the secondary. Look at that. You see that? Almost all of them have that little thing going on. So there's your driving tendency. See if you can find any other efforts there. Let's look right here. See if we have anything here. Right in through here, getting this big run. GPS total. Now that looks really pretty. That looks pretty because what I'm looking at here is what our feet are doing. Oops, excuse me. So I'm looking here. All right. Just right over in here. All right. And we know this is an important corner because look where it's headed. Rock and Roll Central, right? Priority corner. Leading to not the fastest straight out there. This one's a little, but darn if it's not close, so it's super important. And here's what I see. I see coming off the brake, and I see some forceful long G right. This is going to throttle, and I don't see any wavering. There's some variety in there in the form of distance, right, where the mins are at different parts of the track. Here's my summary. Work on your feet for the first half of the season and start looking at the shape of this down here. Everything below that line, and look to, we're just going to pick your best lap right here. Look to, again, this is your feet, right? Look to maximize it. We're going to look for those things right there, which is the same thing as that right there. Look at this right here. This is brake, and then this is braking twice right here for whatever reason. I'm not sure. There's that little guy too. It's making sense. That's a brake, but no throttle, so that works. Yeah, that's your story, Miss Wendy. Your opportunities in your feet, and it's most noted right here, right in there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pick somebody totally random, and I don't even know what's in here. Let's pick Kevin right here, and I'm just randomly picking someone, and I'm going to highlight a bunch of his. See what he's doing there? Do you see that difference? Right, it's coming down here, right, and it's going all the way over. That's what we're talking about, right? Is that making sense? So this is where he comes off brake. Remember, coming off brake is in this direction. But in this case, his doesn't go here and come over, right? It's moving over to the outside, a whole bunch of it on this side. So there you go. There's your area of opportunity. Let me know if your car feels wonky that way and what kind of suspension you have. Often, and if I remember right, a S197 has some real wacky coming off the brakes. The ass gets real spooky. But let me know about your suspension, and that will tell us, because that will often be a reason for why people drive the way they do, because their car feels that way. And in those cases, I have somebody else drive their car, throw down a zinger lap for reference, and see what can happen off brake to apex. That's it. I'm Eric Meyer, Instructor Summit. Wendy, thanks for letting me show you around in your data. And if you want to know more, subscribe to this channel and just start following along, and or send me your data at eric@instructorsummit.com. Cheers.